Welcome back to a Celtic State of Mind. I'm Paul John Dykes, and once again we're up here at Celtic Park for a wander round paradise. There's two games to talk about, of course, the highs and the lows of being a Celtic supporter. We've got the highs of the Champions League performance against Atletico Madrid, against the lows of dropping a couple of points at Easter Road when on domestic duty at the weekend. And I think that we look at both of those performances and we ask, how on earth can you go in there on a Wednesday night and put in such a brilliant performance and then follow up with something that was so flat and uninspiring as the Easter Road game was? Well, I was lucky enough over the weekend to speak to none other than Martin O'Neill, potentially the greatest manager of my lifetime at Celtic Football Club, and I asked him the question, what was it like to be playing Champions League football and put in a brilliant performance and then try to follow that up at the weekend on domestic duty? And he said it was very difficult. I've always heard about a European hangover, and I wasn't quite sure what that was. I always thought it was a physical thing, physical fatigue, where you've played that game and there's travel, etc. And Martin said, well, yeah, that is part of it, but there's also a mental issue whereby you have the elation of the Champions League performance, and then you need to regroup and go again at the weekend. He says never underestimate the impact of that on the players. And it did feel a bit flat at the weekend, and we're going to be speaking about some of the reasons behind it. I'm not panicking about it. I think Celtic showed as a side, and Brendan Rodgers showed as a manager, what we are capable of, where everything comes together and everything clicks, and it seemed to do that on Wednesday night against Atletico Madrid. What a performance. It felt as though there was some kind of curse on the Champions League campaign this season. Against Feyenoord we had 2 red cards, and then against Lazio we had that phenomenal goal by Palma, which was chopped off after it hit the boot of Dyson Maeda. And it felt like the same was happening when we played Atletico Madrid. Rio Hatate, who just came into form, he gets injured. He was devastated. We were devastated for him. And I think when he went off the park, there was that embrace with him and Brendan Rodgers. And I think that shows the kind of relationship that he has with individual players at the club. And that's what's going to hold us in good stead as we move forward. We were able to combat that, and I think there was a big decision at that moment. First 5 minutes of the game, who do you bring on? And there's a few options there. And what Brendan Rodgers did, I think, to the surprise of much Celtic fans, was he brought in Paulo Bernardo, a young player from Benfica who's on loan. He's been playing for Portugal under 21s, and I thought he equipped himself very, very well. Kingsley went under the radar, bit of an unsung hero on the night. Celtic, of course, took the lead through Kyogo Furuhashi, and a phenomenal part was played by Matt O'Reilly, a double 1-2. The man is playing out of his skin. Great finish. James has been asking on the blog about opening the floodgates in the Champions League for Kyogo, as he did in the Derby games last season, and the floodgates have been opened. That's him now scored back-to-back games in the Champions League. Matt O'Reilly gets the Man of the Match award, and instantly he is starting to get interest from the likes of Fabrizio Romano, who is saying that if he leaves the club, he will be the most expensive player to have left Scottish football. So he's worth over £25 million then, and I can't disagree. I just don't want him to leave. And of course, Palma, he gets on the score sheet again, making up for that goal that was chopped off against Lazio. Great performance. And then Brendan Rodgers came in for a wee bit of criticism for his tactical changes, but I'm going to flip that and say that his tactical changes were spot on. Atletico Madrid at half-time made a couple of changes of their own. They were taking a real control of the game in the second half, and if it wasn't for the changes that we made tactically, bringing on another defender, then I think that we may not have got anything out of that game. So I'm going to support Brendan Rodgers on the changes that he made. We go from the highs of the Champions League performance against Atletico Madrid to a flat performance and a scoreless draw against Hibs at Easter Road. I was calling it a tricky away game. Some commenters on Acsom were asking why I thought it was tricky. Well, I think the weekend showed why. The big question going into that game was the selection issue in the midfield, now that Rio Hatate is again injured, very unfortunately injured. But I think that Paulo Bernardo deserved the game and deserved the start. He deserved the jersey. I mean, some of the options obviously were David Turnbull, Tomoki Iwata and Odin Holm. But Bernardo did enough against Atletico Madrid, didn't he, to get the start, and I think he played pretty well against Hibs as well. So that was the right choice for me, for Brendan Rodgers. When you look at the scoreless draw, you ask yourself, why couldn't we break down this Hibs side? And I think one of the biggest issues is Kyogo was starved of service. Hibs had obviously looked at the game the previous week. They were hammered, and they didn't want that to happen again against the Celtic side on form. They've been working on their defensive strategy all week, which is their right, and we need to find a way to pick the lock, and we failed to do it. The service to Kyogo was non-existent from Palma and from Maeda. I thought Palma looked a wee bit flat, but you know what? He's coming into 2 games a week now. The big game against Atletico Madrid, followed by the domestic game, and it all seemed like a game too much for him at this stage. But I'm not writing anything off, and I'm not getting too concerned about the fact that we failed to break them down. We've seen it happen before. And then what happened, I felt, was the substitutions. 2 things. Firstly, it does show that there's a lack of quality on the bench, which then harks back to the recruitment of the summer, and we'll come back to that in a moment. But also, instantly people start saying that the substitutions weren't good enough because it's James Forrest and because it's Mikey Johnson. But actually, when you look at the game, we started to create more chances when they came on. You know, Jamesy Forrest hit the bar. Mikey Johnson made David Marshall pull off a decent save with his effort as well. So I think it's unfair to criticise them too much. It was a disappointing performance. It's easy to look at a scapegoat, but I thought we actually produced more chances when those players came on. I think the one error, if there was one, is the fact that Kyogo was taken off. I think if we'd kept him on, he might have been the guy to get on the end of one of these chances and win us the game. But as I say, we're not going to throw the baby out with the bathwater on this one. It's a nothing each draw. We'll come back from it. I think on Wednesday we showed what we can do when we are at the top of our game. There are debates raging on in relation to fan issues around Easter Road, and some of the fan groups such as the Celtic Trust were asking Celtic supporters to get in touch with them and send their details to them as well, with their experience at Easter Road and how they were actually treated by the security and by the police. And then I've seen from the SLO that Celtic are looking for emails to be sent to JP Taylor as well. So anyone who had experienced negatively the treatment of Celtic supporters at the weekend, make sure that you report that so that they're able to get a dossier together and they can liaise with the authorities to try and ensure that that doesn't happen again. There are some issues obviously ongoing with regards to ticket allocation at away grounds, and I think you saw at the weekend how poor the atmosphere was. You know, it was flat. When you're looking around the stadium and all the empty seats again, it's not a good advert for Scottish football, and it's something that I think there needs to be a consultation on with all the clubs and the authorities in the Scottish game to make sure that we can come to a resolution on that one. There doesn't seem to be any kind of resolution, unfortunately, between the club and our biggest supporters group, the Ultra group, the Green Brigade, when it comes to the flying of Palestinian flags, because they did, as was their human right, and flew the flags on Wednesday night against Atletico Madrid. What's the comeback going to be from UEFA? We will see, and I'm pretty sure that the fans will come together to make sure that if any fine is levied at Celtic, then it'll be taken care of, as it has been previously as well. There was a massive charity ball in Dunfermline for wee Jamie Tierney, where loads of people came together to raise money and awareness for the wee man's fight against Duchenne muscular dystrophy. And it was a huge success. We're going to continue to collect jerseys for the wee guy. Sell the jerseys is the initiative, and all the details is under this particular video. Thanks again for joining me on a wander around paradise, and join us again for a Celtic State of Mind tomorrow at 12:30.